go, hour number 3 on the Rense Radio Network. Crazy days out there, D-A-Z-E. It is a daze. And when you start to try to pull all this together and look at it in its totality, it is overwhelming. We just talked last hour about the admitted Facebook, quote, experiment of 2 years ago, where, as Deborah Tavares knows, they played games with words, taking positive words out of their little news feed, and then watched how people reacted to the stories. Hey, folks, that's grade school stuff. I think that story may well be just a diversion. They're so far down the road. That's not EMF or ELF or cell phone radio frequencies. That's just simple eye cogitation, mental, subconscious entry, and programming. It's mass mind control, and they are so many different platforms they're using now, and they're not even hiding most of them. It's crazy. Deborah, welcome back to the program. How are you?
Well, Jeff, thank you. Certainly the enormity of the situation that we all face is just so vast that it can overwhelm people.
Sure.
And what is absolutely true is really, I think, one of the fundamental obstacles that people need to immediately understand. Because I think right now our biggest threat is the fact, this ultimate illusion that we're in a representative government. We're under a corporate construct, and we face extinction. And the longer everyone considers to think or believe that Congress will help us, or that Congress will vote, or we can get new people in office, or that attorneys can file lawsuits, the longer we remain in one of the most dangerous, most predatory structures that's literally consuming us. Because I can only tell you, Jeff, and I know we've spoken a lot about this, but we're really USA Inc., and the corporate predatory government agencies have deceived the global population.
Yeah, we're just, we each, every one of us, we're just stock certificates, basically.
Absolutely, and you know, the tragedy of the corporate structure is the illusion of justice, freedom, and democracy. When you really think about it, everything is staged. And
it's a hologram. It's a pieced together hologram, and the pieces are interchanged, pulled out, remade, reinserted constantly.
Well, that's true. And what I find so utterly alarming is, as you know, I'm boots on the ground, and I attend many conferences. I travel quite a bit. Here in Northern California, where I am located, I have the opportunity to meet up with people that are presumably the movers and shakers in the movement of truth. And I will tell you something, Jeff, it's horrifying to see these people unaware of who really is running our government.
They're behind the curve. You're right. I know.
And that is really frightening, in the sense that anyone listening right now, of course, can go to stopthecrime.net. You can go to the USA Inc. link, and you can take a look at Senate Report 93549. It's most important that everyone understands that we are in a maze of corporate agencies, and they get their authority through the executive branch via executive orders. And as long as the United States remains in an annually extended national state of emergency, we are the enemy, and the Constitution has been abolished. So has the rule of law. Our judiciary does not serve us, and people remain in an illusion. I just was listening to the news here in Northern California a couple of days ago. There's a family on the coast, Drake's Oyster Bay. They have a business of harvesting oysters, and they're being set upon by one of the corporate agencies, the Fish and Wildlife. And they just lost in the 9th District Court of Appeal. They lost to the taking of their land. Now, what is very important, again, people do need to understand what Senate Report 93549 says. But I'm also going to read, again, because we're under the executive branch via executive order, And these are just some of the executive orders. This does not represent us. You have to keep this in mind. We've got Executive Order 10990, for example, allows the government to take over all modes of transportation and control all highways and seaports. Executive Order 10995 allows the government to seize and control communication media. We have Executive Order 11002 designates the Postmaster General to operate a national registration of all persons.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have this executive, which fits into the climate action plan that is rather horrifying, another way for this massive corporate structure to get revenues. That's what it's all about. But Executive Order 11004 says, allows the Housing and Finance Authority to relocate communities, build new housing with public funds, designate areas to be abandoned, and establish new locations.
Well, it's worse than eminent domain.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm going to back into a few most important realities that we all face. First of all, I think at this point, people that are not engaged, people that look at this as a conspiracy, are really perpetrators in this horrific takedown of humanity.
Uh-huh.
People need to reconsider and reevaluate their reality because they are in the conspiracy. And when you look at the NASA war document, for example, they talk about the technological ages of humankind, and the one we're in now is virtual, where we are in a virtual reality of robotization. We're in a transhumanism agenda.
Yeah.
And I'm going to read a couple of things because I think it builds into our reality, and I have these posted on stopthecrime.net. For those that are listening, you can go to the homepage of Stop the Crime and go under the quick links and click on Hot Radio Topic. And you can find these documents that I'm going to just go over quickly right now, Jeff. I think these are important. We have unwitting victims. We have a targeted individual statement that was given in January of 1997, and it's part of the congressional record. It's the Senate report 645, and it was entered into the record by John Glenn. And he said he raises today to introduce the Human Research Subject Protection Act of 1997. John Glenn said, if I approached any senator here and I said, quote, you did not know it, but the last time you or your family went to the doctor or went to the hospital, your wife or your husband or your daughter or your son became the subject of a medical experiment that you were not told about. They were given medicine, they were given pills, they were given radiation, they were given something, and were not told about this, and were not given informed, and were not even informed about it. Yet they are under some experimental research that might possibly do them harm. Maybe some good will come of it, but maybe it will harm them. And he goes on to say, I have been in public life and have served this country for many years. Frankly, I do not think too many things that I see surprise me anymore about our laws and about our government. 3 years ago, though, I began to learn about a gap in our legal system that does truly concern me. In 1993, the Governmental Affairs Committee began to investigate the Cold War radiation experiments. These experiments are one of the unfortunate legacy of the Cold War. Well, he goes on, and everyone can read this in its entirety, but it's important to understand we have a parasitic corporate system, and when you look at the corporate charters, they are void of recognizing life. We are merely all in a petri dish of experiments, and this is why our food, our water, our air is being poisoned, and it has been for a very long time. And, of course, we know, Jeff, the ultimate goal is for mind control and to create zombies out of all of us. There's another very important letter, and it was regarding victims of electronic weapons of torture. And this was October of 2007, written by Representative Jim Guest out of Missouri. And he said, "Dear member of the legislature, this letter is to ask for your help for the many constituents in our country who have been affected unjustly by electromagnetic weapons of torture and covert harassment groups. Serious privacy rights violations, physical injuries have been caused by the activities of these groups and of their so-called non-lethal weapons of men, women, and even children. I'm asking you to play a role in helping these victims and also stopping the massive movement in the use of RFID chipped technologies in tracking of Americans." Goes on to say, with the new revelations of cancer risk, besides the privacy and human rights problems with the use of the RFID signal, I'm asking for your help in stopping these abuses and aiding those affected. Representative Jim Guest. So we have had good and decent people in our corporate government.
There are a few. There are.
But have not understood that it is a corporate government setup.
No, their words
even right now,
go right out the window.
Even right now, I just was looking at an article that quite concerned me about someone that's highly known that talks about the fact that Congress did not even approve some of the aspects of surveillance. This highly regarded person continues to believe and be shocked that Congress has not approved. Now, what we also need to talk about is this GM recall of all these millions of cars, because when you look at why they're really recalling, and you look at the NASA war plan, it tells you in that plan that they will use recalls to install updated sensors. And we know that with the communications now between cell towers, people's black boxes, Gwyn towers, and with AI, they can cause and have been causing auto wrecks. And this will be become more of a problem on the road as we drive.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to talk about something that Dr. Lieutenant Colonel Tom Bearden talked about, and he said this, a strategic threat completely unrecognized by the West. The Russian methodology leads directly to rather mind-bending extended capabilities. KGB psychoenergetic scientists seem fixed on an eventual goal of directly engineering human unconsciousness, thereby converting the entire human species into a sort of ant species. In short, they seek to engineer what they regard as a perfect communism and perfect order directly on the entire species.
Yeah, it's a hive, a huge hive.
Yeah, he goes on to say that the direct connection of every human's conscious and unconscious mind is the collective species unconsciousness and to Gaia, their God.
Well,
the collective unconsciousness for all species on Earth.
What he's saying is the collective unconscious of all humanity has been talked about for a long time. Tom is identifying that as the prime target now that they are trying to work into. Princeton's been working on this for
well, that's what Facebook was all about. That's what this was all about.
Yeah.
And he goes on to say that the direct engineering of the human collective species is doable, and it's going to be done.
I agree.
Whether we like it or not.
I agree.
And he says in that race, which may eventually determine whether or not we retain any personal freedom at all, the democratic nations are woefully behind. In fact, the West has not even realized there's such a new kind of arms race for dictatorship and control of the collective species in the mind. We've already almost lost it. The West has not even developed the overall theory of psychoenergetics, which is the use of scalar interfacing to manipulate and engineer the human psyche. So where we are now is beyond the fact that we have a de facto government. And for everyone that is listening, you've got to get past that. A representative government no longer exists. We have been taken. And every single year that the extended state of national emergency continues, all government activities go through the executive branch via executive order. And here's a quote from Mark Twain, and I really like this. It says, "It's easier to fool people than to convince them they have been fooled." And that's where we are.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff, I hear us talking right now, saying unimaginable reality. And most people will choose to be fooled rather than to do a little bit of homework. Because I can say, we've organized StopTheCrime.net in such a fashion that you don't need to spend years in researching. You can look at a few documents, and I would recommend that you go to StopTheCrime.net to the Resource Document tab. Take a look at the report from Iron Mountain. Understand that
That's
they
a perfect
said,
starter.
Yeah. I mean, in 1966, as you know, Jeff, they were talking about reducing the population on an annual basis. And with this whole farce of consensus, political, corporate, scientific fraud called the need and requirement to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, of course, suitcased in global warming, which became climate change and is now called climate disruption.
Mm-hmm. Have they switched the name again?
Yes, climate disruption.
I see. Third incarnation, all right.
Yeah, it's just like Agenda 21. They changed it to Future Earth.
Right.
It keeps morphing. It's all part of the word
well, that's
double
part of the
speak.
confusion factor, too.
And then the fact, of course, that people are so medicated and so dumbed down.
And so stressed and so full of anxiety. They just, the first thing they want to do is see how their ball game is going. They want to escape. They want a drug. They want a diversion. And they go to the TV for it. That's where they go.
The reality is that we need to understand it's like pulling the rug out from underneath someone who has been cradled in lies and brainwashed.
Well, you keep, and these, excuse me, Deborah, but the people who keep saying, call your congressman, write to your senator, fax your representative.
Fill out this petition.
They are, oh, God, I don't put petitions. I never have put petitions on my site. They are so far behind the train, there's not even dust in the distance. They're gone. It's gone, folks. The train has left the station and you were left behind. That's not where you go.
No, that's absolutely not. I have a YouTube that we posted, and it's entitled, Who's Running America? And I would really recommend that everybody watch it because you'll see what it looks like in your local cities because they're all incorporated. Your city council members, your county board of supervisors do not serve you. It starts locally and it threads its way through local governments, through state governments, to federal governments. And, of course, we know the world is operated by a maze of corporations.
I had a friend of mine called me on a cell phone once, and he was driving somewhere, and I don't know if this GM recall has to do with they already have GPS, but there was a voice, maybe it was this OnStar thing, I don't know. There was a female voice talking to this driver almost incessantly, telling him where to go, where to turn, how fast to go, what was up ahead, what the weather was like. And the guy was sitting there, I could just see him, like an automaton, being instructed every step of the way on a trip that he was taking. Who was taking the trip was my question. I mean, he was. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. 7.6 million more GM cars recalled allegedly for 6 new ignition-related safety defects.
That's a recall, of course, to update, as we were saying.
Of course.
Sensors.
And they run from 1997 to 2014. This goes way back. They're doing a massive retooling of cars.
Yes, they did a recall on Jeeps about a year or so ago, and I checked with someone that actually worked in the auto manufacturing, and they said when they recall vehicles, they do massive updates with all the sensors and data collection equipment that they have on these vehicles. So what we do know is we have a parasitical government that is doing massive depopulation. And, when they get to the extent where they use food streaming to certain markets using zip codes and package up the food all in the same packages but put different things in the food supply as it's shipped across the country, the same way in which we know that the geoengineering is being souped up over us and dumped. It's different applications over different populations. They're doing it to the food. They do it to the water. Of course, we know that the areas in the country that are suppressed are getting additives to the water supply. We're being absolutely stripped. And what the bankers, of course, did in 1933, after they concocted the Great Depression, which was a war on our grandparents, and they stole America's gold, they, of course, collateralized us against that stolen wealth.
Well, sure, they put us up as security.
Well, they did, and they collateralized our property, our sweat equity, our children, and our souls.
Yeah.
And they believe that they have stolen it fair and square. And I can say that now, with these climate action plans, which are based upon the need to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, again, which is false science, this is just a cover for economic warfare and weather weaponry. And I can say that we're really in the final countdown, if we're not already past the final countdown.
I think we're past the point of no return. We have to take a break. 27 million GM cars going back to 1997 and earlier have been recalled for, you read the list of things, ignition problems. They're electrical, all electrical. And while they have the car in, they'll update everything else, just like she's saying. And you'll never know. And if you ask, they'll say, well, it's for your own good, and they make the car safer so we can put it on the scope and find out exactly what's wrong with it for you easier. And yeah, it's, anyway, it is what it is. Right now, we'll be back with Deborah Tavares in just a minute. Okay, let's get right back to Deborah Tavares, who is heard on the Rense Radio Network, Monday through Friday. This new Google driverless car is really not a car. Oh, it's got wheels and a body. It's a little round. It's kind of like a VW in a way. It doesn't even have a steering wheel. It's a robot. You're going to get in it. It's going to take you to point B from point A. You won't touch the steering wheel. You're going to sit there. You're a captive. You are a unit. You will be put in the robot, and the robot will take you from place to place. No more happy open road driving. No more signaling and lane changing. The robot will take you there. This is the brave new world that is coming down the road at 90 miles an hour at us.
Well, Google, of course, Jeff, is a Trojan horse, and it is the military. It's a military operation.
It's a front, sure. Just like the Space Shuttle program was never about NASA or civilian use. It was military first.
That's right. In fact, I wanted to go over a patent that we have on stopthecrime.net. Again, it's under the quick links, hot show topics. It's a very interesting patent, and it's patent number 2007-013-9247. And it's a torture patent. And basically, people will understand when they take a look at this that this is the key to what has been taking place and why our politicians are no longer able to run the United States, because they are being tortured and they are being influenced. Their minds are being used like a two-way transmitter. They're literally toys, children's toys, being remotely controlled. And we also have something interesting on the website, Jeff, again, under the Hot Radio Topics link. It is entitled Wires in the Brain. And it is a short YouTube video.
Mm-hmm.
It's about research done by Rodolfo Linus, L-L-I-N-A-S. And it shows how they were going to use the fissures in the brain for nanotechnology and operate us remotely.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of research has been taking place for many, many decades. Now we are at the point where we must question whether it's our thought or whether it is telepathic thought. In other words, what we have now is remote thoughts being placed into our minds.
And they don't, it used to be that people said, well, I hear voices in my head. Well, voice-to-skull technology was patented, I think, 35 years ago, to give an idea. Now, what Deborah is saying is telepathy. In other words, you will have a thought or an idea. You won't hear a voice anymore. That's kind of antiquated. You'll have an idea. It really isn't yours. You'll see something in front of you that really doesn't reflect what it really is. You'll see something that you're suggested to see. And this is...
well, Jeff, I have an acquaintance that saw just what you're talking about right now. They were traveling on a road. It was kind of an isolated place. They saw a snake on the road. And they pulled over to remove the snake and just put it off into the bushes, and they saw a gopher snake. And when they picked it up, they just happened to decide, well, we'll look at the tail one more time, and they saw rattles. It was a rattlesnake that they had picked up.
Really?
And what is very important for everyone that's listening...
I ran a video about that. It was one on YouTube just a few days ago.
Ah.
How weird.
Well, I want to say about this, and this is extremely important because we are going to talk about what we can do to protect our minds, because literally we have to really not do anything spontaneous. We really need to rely on our friends that understand that this type of technology is now being used on a global basis. And it is increasing anger in all of our cities. This is part of the chaos that the Aquarius operations briefing talks about. It's a briefing that you can take a look at on the home page at the top of stopthecrime.net to understand that they will use good, decent people as targets to commit chaos, to become shooters or assassins. In fact, recently I found out that in San Francisco, in the Bay Area, on BART, the train system, there have been between 50 and 100 people that will board the train, and they will abuse, hit, strike some of the BART riders, steal their money, and then they'll get off the train. The police call this wilding. No, what this really is a larger scale of remote manipulation, literally through artificial intelligence, using our minds, taking over our thoughts, and making our bodies do what it is instructed. In fact, also on our website, we have a very interesting document from Dr. Mike Zamora, professor and chair of the Department of Cognitive Sciences from the University of California at Irvine. He's the lead scientist on the project quote, public sale of artificial telepathy technology, which he says would inevitably result in the stealing of bank account numbers, PIN numbers, passwords, trade secrets, etc., which in turn would inevitably translate into actual theft. The damage to the economy is going to be catastrophic, and the sudden disappearance of privacy, all privacy, which literally causes society to melt down. And this was in 1998 that this was shown to us. So we're well past the time where these technologies are being fully implemented. You can just go and type in antennasearch.com or towergenie.com and take a look at the deployment of cell towers and antennas in your neighborhood. In fact, it's interesting, too, to type in global cell towers and antenna towers and see how the globe has been wired wirelessly for mass mind control.
There was really an extraordinarily well-done animation of this in large cities, and it was pulled back to show the entire country. And it is, it's a grid. It's all done. It put them up. It's done. I have been blocked from emailing for the past 3 hours on a selective basis. Can't get to my webmaster. Can't get to the network. They're emailing me, but I am being blocked. Not to everyone, just to them. So, more games. Be back in just a minute. Hold on. Okay, and we're back, and since I cannot email, let me speak to the guys in the network. Brett, if you're there, Todd, I have not received a single email from you. I've emailed almost 5 or 6 times. Nothing comes back. Nothing comes back from James, my webmaster, and I apologize for the guest in hour 2, Alfredo Lopez, not being up there. I've sent that at least half a dozen times to James. He's not getting it. So there is real-time selective interference going on. It's not just Mercury retro, not in this case, although that's been a real problem too. So what they're just doing is telling us that you've got no real security to do much of anything anymore unless we allow it. It's
well,
very
Jeff,
simple.
To that extent, because certainly we've painted an extremely gloomy picture, but still, people must not consent, and people must become educated. And we do have some forms on stopthecrime.net. Again, it's under the quick links section, and they're forms to government employees, because very soon people are going to be knocking on everyone's front door, demanding or insisting upon an energy audit, and do not allow an energy assessment of your home.
Oh, they'll try and force their way in. They'll coerce
Well, they
you.
will. And right now, too, here in California, they're working on a groundwater management plan. This is very interesting, and also everyone needs to know this, that, of course, the Club of Rome decided about 5 years ago the quickest way to get into a New World Order was to privatize the global water supply. And this was a release back on January 26th of 2012 from Davos, Switzerland. They said that on January 26th of 2012, the water industry will privately review its newest strategy for driving public water resources into private hands at the World Economic Summit Forum. A partnership quietly launched in October of 2011 with funding from the World Bank, Coca-Cola, and Veolia, which is Rothschild, will report on progress towards its stated mission to transform the water sector by establishing new approaches to water governance. That put the private sector in the driver's seat in water management, calling itself the Water Resources Group, and headed by Nestle, the CEO by the name of Peter Lesmathy. The corporation has already targeted the countries of Mexico, Jordan, India, and South America.
Nestle's been after water for at least 10, 15 years now.
Yes, they have. And I discovered recently here in Northern California, Mount Shasta was approached by Nestle a number of years ago. They wanted to set up a bottle factory up there. But Crystal Geyser now has actually done that. They've purchased an old Dannon location, and they're getting the environmental impact study right now as we speak. People are unaware of the engineered drought here in California, and that this is equating to water theft, which is then going to be land theft, because right now they're telling all the farmers and ranchers that they have to, that are having to truck in water right now and bring in hay. And they're just collapsing private ownership of the rural properties, and that's exactly what the climate action plans say in the requirements to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It's unsustainable for you to live in the country. You emit too high greenhouse gas emissions in coming and going. They really are driving us into the population settlement zones. As I said earlier, Executive Order 11004 said it allows the Housing and Finance Authority to relocate communities. This is what is happening now. And so there are forms on stopthecrime.net that you can have anyone that knocks on your door fill out. But it's first and foremost most important that you understand the corporate structure, because the forms are about the fact that these are corporate structures. These are not laws. And the entire game rests on us continuing to go along with this. They tell us that in the Silent Weapons Quiet Wars document. They say it over and over again in the NWO document that was exposed by an insider in 1969. They say the same thing repeatedly, that all it takes is for the average person
compliance
to be compliant. That's right. So to the level that we are able, we simply must not consent. We are in a lawless corporate reality now, and it's only going to increase and enslave us further.
Look at the fight we put up against smart meters.
Well, smart meters are now required in these new climate action plans, as well as the retrofitting of all inefficient appliances that are not Energy Star rated.
They will determine that. That's right.
And they are also eliminating gas appliances on the link of stopthecrime.net, on the Climate Action Plan link. I would advise everyone to go there. And again, I cannot speak more than to watch who's running America. It really does lay out the climate action plans. These are creeping and have already crept into many towns and communities right now. We're literally being taken on every single level. And the chemtrails, of course, we know, are dumping nanofibers on us, and we know that they're literally wiring us from within as all part of the cyborg robotization of humanity. And that's exactly what the NASA War document that we have posted on our website talks about. The title of that is Robots, Cyborgs, and Humans. And they are eliminating us. It's robotization.
There'll be robots in fast food establishments next, and all of those $9 and $10 an hour jobs will be gone. They're pushing us into the streets, literally, at the low end of the spectrum, and they'll have race war anytime they want it. It's all coming. California is very close to passing a law now requiring that you register your ammunition for your firearms. Well,
I want to tell you, certainly, and I want to tell you something else. I know of someone who lost a dog here recently, and it was chipped, and they say, oh, get your dog chipped, so if it ends up in an animal shelter,
cancer.
You can find it. Well, what they do now is they charge you a few $100s to get the animal out. And if you refuse, then they don't allow you to renew your driver's license or your auto registration.
See, all of these laws and regulations are all written by people. And the people that write them know the game. They're the enemy. And what bothers me the most is the enemy is all around us now. Who are these people?
Well,
what the
they're
hell
mind
do they
controlled.
think they're doing?
They're mind-controlled zombies at this point. We know Aramark, which is a food industry that serves food to the Pentagon and many schools and other organizations. Their food is laced. They've literally used chemicals in our food supply and water for so many decades now that they've created the inability for us to resist now the taking of our minds with the frequency.
Well, we could talk about also the war on organic food. If you want to go vegan, I ran a story today, I think it was today, possibly last night. A mother who wanted to raise her child as a vegan has lost her child. They took the child. They want that child to eat beef, processed foods, GMOs,
and be vaccinated and go to school
absolutely.
Under the Common Core curriculum. So
absolutely.
The Common Core curriculum actually, because it presents sex education to kindergartners, is literally shock. It is literally causing mind control and shock for these children. It is as horrible as the targeted individual.
They're into PTSD in kindergarten and first grade after this stuff.
Well, that's why they're putting in clinics to dispense drugs for all children. And, of course, they'll be serving dinner. But very quickly, I'm looking that we're coming up on the last few minutes of the program, Jeff.
2 minutes.
And I really wanted to get this out so that people could go to stopthecrime.net. Again, go to the quick links to the Hot Radio Show topics and take a look at what is described as the U.S. Space Command's vision for 2020. They say that the United States goal is to dominate the space in all regards, operations to protect U.S. interests and investments. And they go on to tell us that they will be the masters of space. That has been and is now the plan and is largely already put in place. And they discuss how Donald Rumsfeld wanted a space Pearl Harbor. And he says, this is exceedingly, someone then comments to that, this exceedingly fearful posture ignores the fact that the U.S. has more sufficient force to dissuade any nation, including China and Russia, from attempting such an attack. It also ignores the multilateral efforts strongly supported by China and Russia. So I can tell you we are weaponized in space. In fact, I would recommend to everyone, if you're able, get a pair of night vision goggles and take a look up there. It's a whole new world, something that we cannot see with the naked eye or with our binoculars.
Oh, it's a freeway up there.
It is a freeway.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff, I want to thank you for having me on the program.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for being here. Thanks for all the work you do. You're a fountain of knowledge and wisdom and data. And that's what we really need, the data, and you've got it. StopTheCrime.net. Thank you, Deborah. We appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you, Jeff. Good night.
Good night. Okay, that's our program tonight on Wednesday, and a lot to think about. Tomorrow night, we'll be back. Andy Goss will be here, Dr. Bill Deagle, Patty Doyle. A lot of things to talk about then. And then it's the 4th of July. Okay, take care. See you tomorrow.